That's stinking feeling.
Is David coming?
David will not be here today.
I couldn't get
Chicken.
today.
So we do have citizen comments. If you would like me to read those comments, I can, or if someone on the board would like to read those, you can definitely do that. Just let me know.
Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order, and then the first thing is citizens' comments. And do we have any here that want to comment first? Before we read some.
There's two. Mark
I
first.
think they have some over there, right?
Mark, did you have any?
I have others. This is the only one I'm even aware of right now because I just was aware of the meeting about an hour ago. I'm Mark Grossi, live here in Port Aransas and at 206 Turtle Cove. And I was, it appears this is, I guess it's every 5 years, the charter review. I wasn't even sure anymore. Okay, so y'all are doing the Charter Review Commission, and I noticed or was made aware that one of the proposals is that go back to an at-large system. And I say go back because at one time the city did have an at-large system. I believe when we did the charter, I think Charlie was probably on the charter committee. I know I was, that either at that time or subsequent to that, I can't remember for sure which, but I think at that time we went to the place system. And it's been served us quite well all these years. And I would encourage y'all to keep it as opposed to going back to that large system. That large system, in my opinion, is full of problems. One of which, let's say there's 3 people there, 3 positions open. And I'm pretty pleased with the way Arnold's been representing us, and Betsy's not too bad. Man, Jim, I think he's hadn't done a very good job in place 3. And there's somebody running against each of y'all. And so I would like to keep Arnold, so I vote for him. I'd like to keep Betsy, so I vote for him. But the person running against Jim is, I think it'd be much better for that position. So I vote for them and hope my guy wins or my girl wins. At that large system, all of y'all are just thrown into a hat, and there's another 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or 20 or however many run for council, and it's the top 3 that get on the council, and everybody's running again for election. Well, it's hard for me and any other citizen to try to keep the ones we think are doing a good job and get rid of the ones we think are doing a bad job in an at-large. And so often you end up with the ones you think are doing good getting bumped out because they lost by 2 or 3 votes. Whereas if they were running against 1 or 2, 3 people in a particular position, it works, in my opinion, much better to try to maintain, at least from the voter standpoint, the citizen standpoint, keep those that you feel are doing a good job and hopefully get rid of those that you think are doing a bad job. It just works better in that, in my opinion, in that regard. And so I'd encourage y'all to not, I mean, obviously it goes to a vote and citizens can decide one way or the other, but I wouldn't even throw it out there. It didn't work well when we had it. And in my opinion, it wouldn't work well if we went back to that system.
What, let me ask you, Mark, because,
Jim, in public comment, we can't do that.
okay, I'm sorry. All right.
Uh,
All right, well, whenever you get to
I'm sorry.
being able to
No
ask me,
problem,
I'm
no
happy to
problem,
answer
no
any
problem.
questions you might have.
Right.
All right, and there may be other things. I'm just now looking at this, but I know that's one that
I'm
I,
not trying to cut it
I
off,
think
but
it- yeah.
under the Attorney General's.
no, I don't have a problem with that.
No problem.
Anyway, I would certainly encourage keeping them, which has worked well for Port Aransas for what, 40 some odd years now. I don't think there's any reason to change Harsett.
Mallory?
Mallory Kalaya, 505 12th Street of Port Aransas. I would echo what Mark has to say. And the other thing I think that probably should not, in my opinion, be changed is extending the planning and zoning slots from 2 years to 4 years. I think you're giving, 4 years is a long time to have somebody locked in to a position, especially when it's a changing nature in Port Aransas, and I think 2 years is a good term limit. I don't think 4 is necessary. I think it's too long. Even the city councils only goes for 2 years. Nobody else gets to sit on a committee for 4 years. So, and the other thing is that the council has the right to overrule planning and zoning. But if they're there for 4 years and the council is only there for 2, I think that creates a problem. So I would ask you to not change the system as it is now for planning and zoning. Thank you.
Thanks, Melvin. Any other public comment? Ashley?
No, sir. I just kind of echo what they both said, especially when it comes to the PNC situation. I think 2 years is a substantial amount of time.
Why don't you go ahead and state your name and address first?
Hi, sorry.
You bet.
My name's Ashley Robertson. I live at 512 Aransas Channel in Channel Vista. And just echoing what these two people have said to you guys, they both have been in the community for quite some time and have seen the changes. And, the council having a 2-year term for P&Z or for any councilship, I think is a substantial amount of time. And it's, to get what you need done and to also serve and mimic the evolving needs of the community. So that's it.
Thanks, Ashley.
Thank you.
You want to go ahead and read these
I can.
into the record? We've got 3 more that are written. in.
Sorry, I certainly concur. Can we come say that on as far as the term for the PNC? I don't need to comment that much, but I agree with both of these ladies that 2 years is certainly adequate. And if we don't want council people on there for more than 2 years, no reason to have P&Z people on there for 4.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, so the first comment is going to be from Lisa Turcott. She, and all of these are addressed to the city manager regarding the Charter Review Commission. She states, I'd like to chime in on my opposition to
Wait
the
a minute.
extension.
Do we have to read them all? I mean, we got it right here. Do you have to
It's
read?
up to you. If you want me to read them out loud, I definitely can.
I don't
or-
think we need to read them out. I think,
Yeah, we can
Charlie,
hear.
where,
As long as we can accept them.
well, I'd be happy to accept them as submitted. Yeah, really.
We can I would just present their names that they submitted comments and then I'll put a
Very good.
description in there. So we have a comment from Lisa Turcott, Kathy Fulton, and Bonnie Isaac. And they're presented to you for review.
Okay. Thank you. Next item for consideration is discuss and take action to approve the Wednesday, March 17, 2021 minutes as presented. These were previously submitted to the members of the commission on any additions or corrections.
Motion to approve.
Been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Atwell, any discussion, questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same sign, the motion carries. Item B, general discussion and possible action on amending Article 3, the city council, section 3.1, number, selection, and terms. And I guess this is the first item that the public comment was discussed. We asked the city attorney draft a proposed amendment for our consideration, and that is attached. So I think the process is that we can discuss it, and then if we want to submit it for consideration by the voters, we can do that by action of the board. We can refuse to do it, or we can send it back to Mr. Morris to change any language that we would like to change. Sure.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought by our unanimous vote by the people on this committee that were present at the last meeting, that they unanimously voted to send this before the people and at staff suggestions to run it by an attorney that represents the city of Port Aransas' interests, which was done. But I think we voted quite unanimous.
I thought,
Unanimous.
I thought we voted to have Mr. Morris prepare a proposal for us to do.
That's what I
Consider
was,
and discuss.
that's what I thought, actually, I made a motion on that basis. Right? Not that we were voting on it.
Yeah.
But we were submitting, we were requesting his input.
Well, I guess where I was confused is when I heard Mr. Atwell say, I think that's a good idea. Let's, move forward with it or figure it out or something like that. And I thought that when people voted unanimously, that's what they were voting on. But apparently I might be mistaken.
My own part, I'm against it, but I do think that the voters have a right to consider it and make the decision. But I think to do that, we have to have something in front of us to consider and recommend to the voters, and that's what I thought we did.
I was just wondering what is the better way of doing that large? And Betsy, you brought it up. Well, what do you think? Why do you think that's better than the place system?
It's better because you may have several people running for the place system and you like 2 out of the 3 on the ballot, on the place system ballot. And you can't vote for the 2 that you really like, but there's 3 in that race. Or there's 2 in that race and you like both of them for the one place system. But when it gives opportunity to stack the deck, if I can use that term a little bit loosely, by people pushing certain candidates because they're within, if you've got three voters, three people in the one place system, there's undue pressure that the people that don't want those people to kind of run somebody against them by putting them in that same docket. I just think we only ever had a recount once in my recollection about this, and that was
John Corder.
oh, okay. I was gonna say it was this Bubba and the school principal. And they had a recount.
I
and then-
represented John Corder at the recount here.
Oh, okay, okay. So I just think that it gives the citizens the right to say majority rules in this particular situation. Because you may be losing a very good person if you want a second person and there's 3 people running in the place system. But if you're at the at-large system, you vote for the top 3 people that you think out of all these people that have come together to offer their services for free to the council and to hear phone calls at all hours of the day and night and pay attention to them and come prepared. I just think it reflects that the citizens get more of an input and who they trust as their leaders versus having so much of a political charade of, I'll buy you a hamburger if you vote for me kind of a deal. You know these people, or you can find out about these people through their service to the community before they decided to want to be on council. I just think it's a fair way that we should elect people.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I really wish I would have known the history or when it was originally approved through the voters to switch it from at-large to at-large to place. I mean, there had to have been a specific reason. And then at the last meeting, when they showed us the places and you have people just kind of going in there, even though they don't really represent those places. I wish I knew the history as to why originally it was changed, why it was not working the other way and felt that this other way was better. I also feel like with the at large, you're getting more of the popular vote. So you're voting the 3 popular, most voted candidates in because they're all receiving the top 3 votes, which I think is fair. Plus, I think you're right. I think sometimes you've got 2 people or 3 people running against each other in one place and you like 2 of them and you think that they would both be great assets to whatever, the council. So,
When the charter was adopted, we went to the other system, the one that Betsy's proposing. Over the years, if you look at municipalities in Texas, and you look especially at the litigation in Texas over elections, they've gone to more of a place system. And the reason that the courts have said that, in my opinion, and I represent governmental agencies, is that it more fairly distributes the various elected officials throughout a community. And, a lot of cities not only have gone place, but they've gone geographic places. Corpus had to do that, and it was set up to a court that they had to do it. And I think that there was a trend back, I don't know how many years ago, Jim, how many years ago did we look at that?
I don't remember. I
Probably
don't
20.
remember. I don't remember.
It's been a long time. And it's worked. I think it's worked. You look at the last election, I think it worked.
I think the reason I thought maybe it would be something to look at for people to think about again is the fact that unlike Corpus Christi, we don't have this disparate places. We're pretty small. And to think that one person is represented, and that's where my mind is, that somebody represents a place. Well, they shouldn't be, people can be vote for who live in that place and speak very passionately for that place. And I don't see why that still couldn't happen in an at-large situation. I think that the one thing that what you said, Michelle, and Betsy, is that if there are several people running for one place, you only have one choice, and yet there may be 2 people in there. And so that's kind of what I wanted to ask you, Mark, because and I'll be happy to hear you if that's okay. Yeah, because I think it's I'm totally open. But I just thought it was an issue that maybe we should talk about, right?
Yeah, one of the things I think you see happen in an at-large, let's say you have 3 positions, 3 places, and each place has 3 people. So you have 9 people running for city council, and generally it sort of sorts out like this last election and most elections, where if I want to run, I'll probably pick a place, one that I think I can win, but also that I'm more likely to win a position where the other person's running, I don't think it'd be as good at doing the job. If you have an at-large, though, you now have 9 people running just in the pot. And what I saw happen in the past, and I think it still would apply, when you have 9, I'm sitting there thinking, I know Arnold was doing pretty good, Betsy was doing pretty good, Jim, I'm not so sure. But also, oh, my old friend Fred's running too, and I should vote for him. Well, you end up often where because I voted for Fred, who didn't have a chance of winning, but I didn't, I kind of hated not to vote for him, that now Jim won by 2 votes because I put my vote somewhere else. And I think you see that much more in an at-large, but because you're spreading each voter's vote around more, and consequently you're getting some votes go to people that aren't going to garner that many votes, but it's enough to bump off to move the equation, where Jim ends up winning and Sam, who I really thought would do a better job, lost by 2 votes. And I think we saw that a lot, in my opinion, when we had an at-large system. And whereas a place system, I certainly don't think somebody ought to represent Old Town and somebody represent Island Orange area or whatever. That's right. In our town, that's just not going to work, and it shouldn't. But I think to have the place system, it makes it more likely that the outcome is what the voter really wants. Now, the argument, I understand Betsy's argument, and I think that's why, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all if you throw this out to the voters that they would vote for that large system, because on face value, it just sounds like, sure, that, why not? I mean, you know, whoever the top 3 vote getters or whatever win, they're now in the council, but the results are often not what you think they'd be. And then as far as putting it on the ballot, you know, I mean, to take it to the extreme, if you just throw everything out to the voters, why have the charter committee in the first place? You know, just to let anybody propose anything and let the voters decide. And so I'm still very strongly believe that the place system is better. It's worked for us all these years. And in my opinion, the at-large system, when we had it, did not work as well.
Thank you.
I don't know if that answered your
You
question.
did. I appreciate it very much. I did put you on the spot, and I'm sorry.
Oh, no. You know me, I like to preach, it's always easier on this side of the table than that side of the table.
Well, I regret I wasn't able to be here at the last meeting when the issue was first raised. There's compelling arguments on both sides. Personally, I would agree with the point that Jim made in terms of the places representing a particular part of town, if you would say, and there aren't that many disparate opinions, if you will. I mean, we are a small community, and when this issue first came across my screen, I was going, yes, at large would be a good thing, because it would allow the will of the people to pick the 3 best candidates if there were 3 positions open, let's say. So that was my initial inclination. So I was leaning in favor of the at-large system, and I see the rationale for keeping the place system. But like I said, I think there's good arguments on both sides. I would prefer to let the people choose.
My prediction, if we go back to at-large, I'll live here ready.
I need some clarity as to what the problem at large was.
Just,
We-
I can come back up there. Just what I already said is.
Right, but I mean, if you have, I mean, if you're taking your vote to somebody else, but so you do have the top 3 people that got the popular vote, but you really didn't want that one of them to win. Obviously, they got the most votes.
It's just, and I just think that system siphons off more votes for other candidates and ends up, we're really the preferred
I
candidates,
see.
and not just my preferred candidates, but that the candidates that would do the best job often don't get elected.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Thank goodness for the secret ballot. If you don't want to vote for your buddy because you really don't think he's doing the job, you don't have to vote for him, and he doesn't have to find out, because in this country, we still enjoy the secret ballot. Another thing that worries me about the place system is in the beginning, everyone says, oh no, we're a small community. We don't really mean that they do a place like Nueces County does. Now on their council, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure you will, but they have some on the place, and then they have several seats that are at large. And that gives them continuity with the people that are on the place system that's maybe stay in or are more electable or something, and lets new ideas come and flow. But I think it's a slippery slope. And the example that I have to my evidence, because blah, 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 all day long, but evidence is pretty important. When this first came up, someone sitting right there, works for the city, had a map. Drew one circle around Island Moorings, drew another circle around one of the other developments there. And said, this is what you may have in mind? No, that's not what we have in mind. But this town does not lend itself to that. If we go and stay with the place system, there will be a thought among a lot of people of, listen, the place system, we really need to kind of carve this town up. And when you see how you carve the town up, there isn't a single neighborhood that is not going to be represented by a very high socioeconomic group. Because you say, oh, let's keep Old Town. Well, if you really think about what the dimensions of Old Town are and go and look what's has been built, is being built, and is proposed being built, that's not going to be representing the workers that really can't even find a place to stay here anymore. So I think the place system right now, people can say, well, it's not really a place system. We just kind of don't want to let every Tom, Dick, and Harry come and try and mess up the program because we got it figured out. I think that that may lead a lot of people to say, yeah, the place system. But you have a place system, and then you take an oath of office that you are representing that geographical area. And I just think that's a slippery slope. Maybe not for us right here, but maybe the next Charter Review Commission is going to say, wait a minute, you know, I don't know. We don't have the geographical ones, and that's, to my mind, the way the place system kind of came about in Corpus, because they did have very specific neighborhoods that needed stuff entirely different than some of the other neighborhoods. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I was wondering if there was anything within the history of this issue. You said the charter started out at large, and then for some reason they went to place. What was all that discussion? What was that history? I think that's what Michelle was talking about. She would like to know a little more about, and I don't know how we dig down into all that. And quite frankly, that's what I thought maybe the attorney would, the city attorney might give us a little pro and con.
Well, and I thought we kind of asked, because, you know, generally there's like an amendment or a date when something has been voted and changed. And I don't recall seeing that on the at-large or place in our book.
That sign over there, that one of those placards, unless they've moved them, did say early on, they had a mayor and two, I don't know if they call them aldermen. So this governing body was a city council, a mayor, and two helpers.
That's before we went to the home rule city steps.
Right.
Is it fair to ask the city attorney for a little pro and con?
I think it is, and I think that if we go back, there's minutes of these meetings, and they meet every 5 years. I don't know if they keep a book on it, but they should. We could probably go back in that book and see.
It'd be interesting to
99,
do
I
the
would say
discussion.
99 is when it went back to the place system. So I think
What year?
97, 98, somewhere around there.
But the
maybe-
commission, when I've been here at the end of the term, we've written a recommendation report to the city council, and it ought to be in that report.
Yes, I think so. And it's, of course, they can say yes or no too. Right. But I agree with Arnold, and that, you know, there's compelling positions on either side of this thing. And I'm glad Betsy brought it up initially, because I think it is something that whether it goes to the people or not, I mean, I think generally it's a good idea to give something of a change and decide, do you want that change? And that is part of the process. I must admit, I'm having questions about the at-large just because of the comments and the discussion. And so I'm ambivalent right now, and I would like to have a little more clarity of how we get to hopefully reason the decision here.
I think what we might do, Jim, is our review, we table this item for consideration next month and ask the city attorney and the city secretary, either one, to provide the information that you requested.
So
Right,
moved.
I second. I mean, I'd like to have, I mean, I'd like the at-large, and that's the way I was thinking of it, but you know, I like it today, and if there's a reason specifically why we went to place, we don't want to make the same mistake by going back to it. So I'd like to have a little bit of the history, if that can be found, some of the arguments as you stated.
All right, well, it's been moved and seconded that we table it for consideration next month and ask the city attorney or city secretary to provide the history information that we requested.
Perfect.
Is there any discussion?
Well, not only you put it in an or situation, and I think and the city attorney and the city secretary provide what they can of previous discussions of the issue.
Yeah, and I agree, Jim. I thought that's what we were gonna get this time.
Yeah.
That's what
I
we
did
were
too.
kinda
I thought a little
asking.
pro con. And,
Yeah, the
and,
history of it.
let's talk about it, blah, 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 get around there.
Okay, well, if there's no other discussion, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, the motion carries. Next item is general discussion, possible action on amended Article 5, nominations and elections, specifically section 5.06 runoff election. And what that does is basically goes from on a runoff election that'd be held with not less than 14 or more than 21 days after the election. And they changed it to 20 and 45. And my question was, is that a statutory change?
It is.
Well, I have trouble with the language and what I'm reading this thing and then the highlighted red thing, it just doesn't make sense. It says the last sentence, such runoff election should be held not less than 20 days, nor more than 45 days. And then it goes the date, the final canvas. I should be following the date of the final, to me.
Right.
They struck out following, and I think it should be following the date of the final canvas.
Now, you need to reinsert that word.
Right. There's a great word that's in the crossword puzzle. It's called STET, STET. And it says replace the word that's been struck. I love it.
Well, if that's statutory, then
Well, it better not be statutory. I mean, I've got somebody that can write English, I hope, up there.
well, I think they left that word out.
I think
it
they
has
did.
to be reinserted, but if it changed from 14 days to 20 and 21 to 45 is statutory.
I have no problem with that. No, it was just the syntax.
But no, we're not gonna make a motion based on what we see because what we see is at large.
Need to correct it and resubmit it.
And that is statutory, that's in the election code?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you provide me a copy of that?
I can.
Us a copy of that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
All right, the next item is discussion and possible action on amending Article 10, planning, section 10.02, planning and zoning commission. And this is the provision that seeking to change the terms from 2 years to 4 years.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. May I ask a question regarding that last issue?
Sure.
Is that applicable if there's an at-large?
What?
It would be.
Would there be a runoff if there was an at-large?
A tie vote.
That's a good question. That's a very good question.
If there's a tie vote.
Well, I mean, if you've got,
Our charter reads it's gotta be
It would be.
50%. It's
Mhm.
You gotta
majority
have
vote.
50% of the
Oh,
Three
okay.
positions.
Okay, okay.
And the next one then, as I say, is the change in the plan and zoning commission.
I have a comment.
Okay.
I think 4 years is too long, and I think 2 years is too short. And I think 3 years is a good compromise. Just because I understand, even, if you're on school board, you're there for 2 years, where a lot of the people that get on these boards, they're not necessarily attending meetings, so they're not going to hit the chair and be up to speed. And I think it does take at least a good year for somebody to comprehend exactly the position that they're now undertaking. And I understand that frustrating of having to train somebody or not train them, but teach them for a year. And then that next year they're good because they've got the knowledge, and then they're done, or they could be voted not to be
Right.
on there anymore.
Yeah.
I think a 3-year is a nice compromise, because that gives them 1 year of education and 2 years of performance. I think 4 years, I think that's a long time, not just because you don't want somebody there that long. I don't know if people are willing to be on boards that long. Or if people are going to come forward knowing that they have to have a 4-year commitment.
Right.
And I agree totally. I know when I served on P and Z, it took a while. And I have a base in education, essentially, where I'm familiar with statutes and laws and things of that nature. However, I have to admit, when you get to the specialized area of planning and zoning and all the various ordinances have to be complied with, there's a learning curve there. And most of our citizens, they come in, they're well-intentioned and they take the seat, and Mark knows, you sit there and municipal law, it isn't just local ordinances. We're impacted by state, federal, and other agencies that all have these regulations. And the learning curve is steep. The 4 years, though, is quite a commitment as well, because there's a lot of work. I really appreciate how much work and how much time it takes out of your week to prepare and show up and be able to be a functioning member of a board or the council. It is a lot of work. And that 4 years is a big commitment. I smiled when she said 3 years because I didn't know which was better, 2 or 4 either. So I think the 3 is an interesting concept, but I don't know the answer to that. I know how difficult it is. And trying to attract candidates who are willing to make that commitment, that's something else. I mean, we're going to impose rules. We want to make sure that they work and they're attractive where people want to serve, knowing that, the end is near, if you will.
One quick comment.
Sure.
PNC doesn't have any term limits. You can be on PNC and be reappointed and reappointed and reappointed and
That's right.
reappointed. And that may be a good thing because of the base of knowledge that some of the more seasoned people will have had. And because we have such a huge growth opportunity, or if you don't look at it that way, but we have such a big opportunity for growth here, we need people that know what's going on. So it doesn't bother me that there's no term limit, because if you're poorly performing, council will find out and you're not going to probably be reappointed. So I don't see that there's a big problem with that.
I would kind of agree with it, because I think the council can, in its observation of everybody out there, and quite frankly, my experience is that everybody stays on until they're not appointed, and unless they quit for some other reason, they move out of town or don't want to do it anymore. And it's kind of like Charlie, we on the charter review, we've been doing this one, so we do have some, if you would call it, institutional knowledge, although it may be escaping a little, but I think the 2 years has worked very well, and I don't know, I haven't heard a huge cry to go for 4 years. Who proposes this?
Staff.
Let's hear from staff.
Well, there, and from what I understand, I had that discussion with Nicole, having to re-educate new commissioners every time, there's a turnover.
Right.
And 2 years, the 2-year limit right now makes it more attractive to potential candidates, because you can see the horizon in 2 years. 4 years, do you know where you're going to be in 4 years? I mean, that's a push. But that was the problem. From what I understood Nicole to say, that was it, having to essentially the re-educate, because you're right, you're literally, it's all data download. You really haven't much to offer because you don't understand just how broad and diverse some of the issues that you're working on.
Right.
Yeah, Rick Adams was here right before we started.
Oh, that's
Actually, one of the reasons also is that they do have trouble getting qualified applicants to apply.
Well, that's endemic in
Yeah.
all boards and everything else, I think.
Can I say something?
Sure.
You come up to the
A lot of
mic.
those applicants, though, they were on the P and Z and they're supposed to vet them. A lot of them weren't property owners, so there were a bunch of vacancies came up before that reason. So the city really needs to vet them a little bit better before they put them on the board. And then they wouldn't have those vacancies again, so.
Well, that's an interesting question, because I actually have a client who was on that thing, and she got kicked off because she's not a property owner.
Yeah.
But she lives with this man who has a thing. She lives here. She's very active here, everything else. And property owner to me doesn't really, I mean, you also have property owner, and you have to vote, and you're a resident here. And those are the issues to me. Not just because you own a piece of property, a guy owns a condo, executive keys. I mean, that doesn't qualify to be on a P and Z, does it?
Oh, I didn't make that rule.
Right. Well,
Now, you first, then Ashton.
Betsy kind of covered one of the issues, or what I was going to say, in that once you're on P and Z, you can be reinstated each time your slot comes up. So it's not like you have to be on there 3 years. I mean, if you were not really good at what you're doing, then you won't get asked to stay on. The other thing that, and I disagree with the city saying they haven't had quality. They have, but the way it's worked in the past is when you sign up to be on several boards, you actually can, by the charter, be on 2 boards at one time. Apparently, that was not explained to some of the positions that were being filled, because I've applied before for P and Z and then another board. And they said, well, you can't be on 2 at one time. So we're putting you on this board, but not P and Z. And that's not what the charter says. And so, I'm probably a little touchy about the P and Z, but I don't think people should be on there for 3 years, simply because you can't get them off until 3 years is up, even if you want them off. So, thank you.
Ashton?
I just got appointed to P and Z, and I think a lot of times I'm a real estate agent, and I know a lot of the people on P and Z are builders or of that nature, and I think sometimes those people are appointed simply because they have a general working knowledge of the ordinances, right? So you assume that you have somewhat of a knowledge base going into the position, but when you're actually sitting there, it's like drinking from a fire hose. I mean, it is. And I like to think I'm a very studious person, and I have read and highlighted, but until you're sitting in the chair and you have a item in front of you, every situation is different, and how that ordinance applies or is applicable is different. And so I tend to agree with Michelle. I absolutely think 4 years is too long. A, it's too big a commitment for someone. And B, I just think that's an enormous amount of time to have somebody sitting in a position. I think 2 years is too short. I have sat through 4 meetings, and I feel like I am just now getting a handle on things. Not because I don't know the information, but just going through the general flow of things. And so I think 3 years would be a very nice compromise, or 2.5, but I tend to agree with staff that 2 years is just the first year. I feel like you're learning the information and learning how the procedures go. And then the second year, you may catch your breath and actually be able to apply that to what's in front of you. So that's my 2 cents, but.
well, if I may, it is an issue of everybody coming on and not having a clue what's going on. And so maybe it's for that the staff understanding that has procedure, has a little education. When I became Justice of the Peace, I had to go for a whole week. Here, I'm a lawyer. I knew a lot of it, and I didn't know a lot either, same thing. But I had to go for a whole month to learn all the intricacies of being judge. And that's not a bad way of approaching things. I mean, it is a learning curve. Well, let's have a learning process. And I know that's a huge burden to put on anybody in the staff, because it puts them as understanding everything about the whole process, and they may not. And I don't know whether in the municipal league, there is some, they have some functions in that regard to educate people and get them up to speed. Every city has its own ordinances, and so anyway, I think the staff's issue is a valid issue. Whether it's resolved by trying to extend the term is the next question, and I don't think it is really. I think it's I'm not looking at you particularly, Frank, but I'm just saying because you're staff, so you're the eye of the needle here. So anyway, but I think it is an education thing, and I think there is probably in the municipal league, they probably have something like that, don't they?
Are you saying that if you get on the board, you, as a new member, you have to go to a certain amount of educational? Is that what you're proposing?
I wouldn't put the qualification on that.
An orientation is what you.
Yeah, an orientation, and it's a process that the staff develops over time.
Do they
Yeah.
not currently have that
Or I
so that
think
they
so.
know what the legal?
Well, you know, yeah, my first
Well, I mean,
year,
there should be that, there should be some, you know, somebody should be told the legal ramifications of your votes or non-votes.
So I have asked staff numerous times for some sort of education, I thought there would be at least an orientation of how things procedurally, right, should go. And that just hasn't come to fruition yet. I think a lot of that had to do perhaps with COVID. You do have to watch, just like you guys had to watch the YouTube video on, we all had to watch the YouTube video, but that's just not enough. And I do think education would be a great compromise for those terms. I don't necessarily, I said this last night to, after my meeting, I said, it's unfortunate that I'm having to learn this process on the, communities at the community's expense. That's not fair. But it's also not fair as someone who's been appointed not to have the tools to do your job appropriately, So I do think education would be a great compromise and something I would be all for.
I
So
think what Jim said, you look at just the fees, but all the judges in corpus are required to have the same type of
That's right.
orientation we
Right.
talked about. Elected officials, county judges and
School board
commissioners are.
members.
I had to do it as on the court commission. I had an orientation that I had to do. And we even had 2 new ones that have had orientation during COVID. So I think you hit the nail on the head, Jim, and an orientation education process has to be a part of it.
And it may take some time to get it together, but it'd be well worth it. And I think my perception of people that volunteer to be on there, that are appointed, they have a genuine concern and genuine interest, and they're seeking education on it, and not necessarily advice, but education on it. And
Well, what's the feeling of the group about Michelle's proposal?
I like that as well. I do have another, and I don't mean to change the subject on it. I think that a lot of people do want to serve because they love Port Aransas, very, very much, and they'll do anything to help. The poorest I was on P&Z for 9.5 years. When I got my packet, I went to every single person. You wanted a permit and you needed something special about it because of your land or something. And people thought I was crazy, but you know what? You need to learn this kind of stuff before you have the temerity to say, I think I should be on planning and zoning because I'm a real smart cookie. I just don't see that somebody who isn't sitting at these planning and zoning meetings, like the 3 of these people are now, trying to wrestle something good out of them being on that committee. It starts with them going to city council meetings. It starts with them sitting on the various committees. And I think they're pretty presumptuous if they don't do their homework and know that it's going to be really difficult, and that P&Z is probably the hardest working because of the sheer volume of what we have going on in town right now. But yes, we need self-education. But if it comes as a surprise that there's all this work involved, what the heck are those people doing and what is council doing appointing those people? If they can't use council as a filter to who knows what they want to do and who just wants to grandstand, this town will be in more of a problem than it needs to be. But self-education, nothing beats it. And I'm sure the municipal league will have some good, tips and tricks for all the committees. Why wouldn't they? Real estate has great courses for just about any sliver of that real estate pie.
If I may, Charlie, Frank Morgan and I, my first year on P and Z, we were offered the opportunity to attend a planning seminar at the city of Corpus Christi. And although it was somewhat helpful, it really wasn't geared for a small city and the experience that we had on the board. When you're on the board, one of the things you find is that you normally get the materials, you don't get the materials ahead of time enough to really study them, to go and do your own research. Secondly, if you're new, like Ashley, you walk in, they don't even tell you where the resources are or where they're getting their information from, what they're going by. And again, because it's, the law, municipal law has so many, it's like a hydra, the mythological hydra, you've got all these different heads. It's really hard to get there. And so much emphasis is placed on staff to say, this is the package here, this is what we want to do. They call the vote, it's yay or nay. And so it's like she said, it's like a fire hose. But I would echo, and I would think that 2 years would be fine in terms of, for commitment purposes, people are really interested, so they can at least get a gauge as to whether or not they think they're suited for that kind of work. And if we're going to keep it at 2 years, then I think we need to figure out a way to give them some sort of an orientation where these are the resources. This is what a packet looks like. Before you show up to the first meeting, at least know what the packet is, know what the direct line is to get to Rick or Nicole, so you have questions.
Or we give a report to the city council for their consideration and they can adopt it or throw the whole thing out. But maybe as one of the recommendations from this group, we talked about what Jim was talking about, recommendation to the council, which wouldn't go on any charter amendment, but
Right.
it would be a recommendation to the council to come up with some type of.
That'd be great. That'd be
I
great.
think an important addition to just an orientation is possibly the city's attorney telling P and Z members that they could get in trouble. I mean, what their responsibilities are. I mean, it's not necessarily an opinion vote, it's a law vote. And I think they need to understand that. And I think it needs to come from the city attorney of what their responsibilities are as a member.
And most of the organizations that I was talking about, they do have a section of them that come from
The
the
law.
county attorney, city attorney.
That's very important. You don't want anybody seen personally
Good.
sued because of their vote, which they did not realize.
Well, I'll be bold and say, I'll make a motion that we do not, I don't know what the motion is. Let me see. Let's think about it. I'm not in favor of 3 years. I think 2 years is just fine. And I think I would vote against the proposal that the city staff has presented at 4 years, period.
I second that.
All right, any discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. And we will, though, put an orientation recommendation.
I think that'd
in
be
our
excellent.
draft.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Are there any other charter amendments that any member of the commission would like to have us consider? Probably not today.
Let me ask you, on the P and Z, because you have to be a property owner to serve on that, and what was the reason behind having to be a property owner instead of just a registered
I think
voter?
that's statutory also.
Is
I
that
don't know. I
statutory?
don't know whether that's true or not.
But why don't we ask that question?
The staff?
Francis, why don't we
Can we get the city attorney?
attorney to talk to us about the requirements to be on P&Z.
Would you like him to be present at next meeting?
That'd be great.
Well, we want to make sure, I'll support David's thing. he's a lot of money. And so we want to make sure we're getting
Yeah, I just want to
good
know,
stuff from him. And so, and I know that's a big burden on him and
have more than just one issue. If
Yeah,
there's
right,
not that any,
exactly.
there's not much on there. I mean, I just want to know what the reason of having to be a landowner to serve on P and Z.
Is it a
Is that
statutory requirement?
statutory
Yeah.
or can it register a voter? Well, is it statutory?
You know,
Period.
I know, for example, the water district, you have to be on the board, you have to be a property owner, but you don't have to live in the city.
I know.
And that's statutory. That's a statutory requirement out of the water code. And I'll bet you're gonna find something out of the general law that
Could be.
says the same thing. But listen, Mike, tell us.
Then we'll know.
I don't think we need an attorney right now.
No.
I think
Let's,
we
if he could just.
One
provide
question
that-
cost
right.
us $150
We're
for
putting
an answer.
P&Z back on our next meeting.
Oh, no.
$150. Oh, no way.
He didn't have to come here.
No.
Talk to him on the
It's-
phone. He
it's-
didn't need to come here.
It's portable. It's
Actually,
portable.
email it.
Yeah.
Text him. It should be cheaper.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
would it be out of line to ask city staff to research to see if there's something in the Texas Municipal League or some other official guidance on the various programs that we have, the P and Z adjustments and appeals? See if there's some educational stuff that proponents that want to be on the board can be told, come on into the library. Here's a list of what you may be encountering if you get on P and Z, or here's what happens if you're on the library board, which I was also on and I love because nobody fought. Everybody got along. It was great.
Well,
But
that's
we
not
don't necessarily
necessarily
have
true.
to.
I mean, we started something here and we poked the hornet's nest on that one. We had Rick Cocky up here and he was beat red on that.
Yes, he was. Okay, anything else? How about a next meeting date?
I would like to say, if y'all did not know, council extended your term for a year, so.
For
at the
a
last
year?
For a year at the last city council meeting, if you need
I
it.
thought it was 3 months is what I read in the minutes.
They wish to extend it for a year, so they changed it from 3 months to.
So
So if you have.
When
plenty
will
of
it be
time.
on the ballot? In November, maybe?
It, probably anything for this one, depending on how fast I'll move with it, will probably be May. So the May general election for any kind of.
Next
charter-
year.
Next year,
Okay,
charter
all
changes.
right. Today's 26, so we need to get staff and everybody time with 16th, look good. I mean, 23rd.
I can do that. Gonna be in Washington DC on the 23rd, but I can do it the 16th.
Oh, we're
What month?
talking about month.
What month?
I'm sorry.
June.
June.
I would like to say we have council goals workshop the 15th and 16th,
Okay,
so that might not be a good date for the 16th. if
you be back the 30th?
alternate.
Yes.
30th is good for me.
Charlie, do you get back before the 30th or on the 30th?
No, I get back on Saturday, 26th,
Oh, okay.
so I can do the 30th.
Yes, that's good for me as well.
Sounds good to me too.
Same time, 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock.
3 o'clock.
3.
3 o'clock's good.
I have to take my nap at 2. When you get to be 85, you have to.
Power nap.
I don't
Power
think we
nap,
probably
exactly.
want to interrupt that.
Never.
I never took a nap till COVID.
So we're talking the 30th right now?
3 o'clock.
Okay.
Is there any other business to come before the commission? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
That's non-debatable. We're adjourned.
Good meeting. Good
Thank
meeting,
you.
Beth.